Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, we're going hunting for a core breaker for the new ZYGARDE-centric Master League meta. These battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community, Tangy Platypus, so many thanks for the battle submission, and today we're testing out Waterfall PRIMARINA. PRIMARINA, due to its fairy subtyping and its fairy charge moves, does very well into ZYGARDE, but with Waterfall, it gives it the ability to hit some of ZYGARDE's common teammates, like Ho-Oh and Solgaleo, for at least neutral or super effective damage. So without further ado, let's hop out of the matches, and let's check out Waterfall PRIMARINA in the Open Master League. Hopping into the first match, and the target has been acquired. PRIMARINA into ZYGARDE, opponent save switches into Ho-Oh, and Ho-Oh getting absolutely torn to shreds by Waterfall. The opponent is going to be firing off the Sacred Fire, but we see a switch and a catch onto the Shadow Tyranitar. Now the Shadow Tyranitar is running Bite instead of the more traditional Smackdown, and the opponent is going to be able to pick up a knockout with the Brave Bird. And now, do you send back in the PRIMARINA here to farm up energy? No, choosing to send in Groudon. Groudon will be able to massively overfarm and then go for the Fire Punch just before the opponent is able to make it to a Brave Bird. The Fire Punch gets shielded. Opponent goes for an extra Incinerate, trying for good charge move timing, but that lets the Groudon make it to another Fire Punch, going for the Snipe with the Waterfall. The Waterfall is going to pick up the KO, but a shield will have to be used. In the back, oh my, the opponent has Groudon in the back. So far in this first game, Waterfall PRIMARINA catching the opponent a bit off guard. They can only make it to one move here, and it turns out they don't even end up throwing it, and the ZYGARDE in the back is going to concede the match. Picking up a tough lead in the next match, PRIMARINA into Giratina Origin, but the opponent does not stay to check the fast move. They save switch into Excadrill, and Excadrill is in a very tough spot going against the Waterfall PRIMARINA. With Waterfall, PRIMARINA does not do well going up against Giratina, but the opponent does not stay to check the fast move. They send in the Exca, and suddenly things are looking very good here, as the Groudon will get a full farm down, and you can just reposition alignment to put the Shadow Tyranitar onto that Giratina later in the game. We do see the Precipice Blades grabbing a shield, and Groudon making it to Precipice Blades number 2. This is only a neutral move, but it does massive damage onto the Giratina. Giratina continuing to farm, and this is a very comfortable no shield here for the Groudon. Opponent goes for the Ominous Wind. Ominous Wind plus a Shadow Claw will pick up the KO. In comes the Tyranitar, and in the back it is going to be Dialga. And this is a situation where having Bite on the Tyranitar is pretty nice. As you can see, the Bite damage is absolutely shredding through this Dialga, and Tyranitar is going to be firing off the Brutal Swing. The Brutal Swing is going to be shielded by the Dialga. We see a switch into the PRIMARINA. These Waterfalls, of course, not doing a lot of damage, but going for the Disarming Voice. The Disarming Voice is going to get Dialga low. PRIMARINA is able to get the Waterfall farm down. In comes the Giratina Origin. The Disarming Voice is going to be reached. This is more than enough to KO the Giratina and take the game. Picking up a bit of a tricky lead in the next match, Waterfall PRIMARINA into Dialga. Now this is a matchup where Waterfall, of course, is a bit of a disadvantage, seeing that Waterfall is going to be resisted. Opponent is going to be firing off the Iron Head here. Iron Head is only going to hit for neutral. PRIMARINA farmed up to the Moonblast, opting for the Disarming Voice. Neither one will be enough to knock out here. The Disarming Voice will connect. We see the save switch into the Bite Tyranitar. Opponent is going to farm up a bit of energy and send in Therian Landorus. Now Landorus could have potentially fired off a superpower there, but instead overfarms and lets Tyranitar make a Brutal Swing. Tyranitar is going to let this go. Opponent can go for the double super effective superpower, picking up the knockout there. You could potentially send in PRIMARINA for a one shield farm down, but instead choosing to send in the Groudon. The opponent is already debuffed, so a superpower, of course, is not going to be doing a ton of damage, but we will see a shield on the first. So now, these moves are going to be doing even less damage as they're double debuffed. As you can see, that just does nothing, and since their defense is 2-stage debuffed, a Fire Punch should be able to knock out the Landorus. And it does. In the back, it's Ho-Oh, and this is definitely going to be an uphill battle. Firing off the Precipice Blades, that's going to be no shielded by the opponent. We see the switch into the PRIMARINA. Opponent is going to be firing off their Brave Bird, so they're going to look to switch into Dialga. In comes Dialga. PRIMARINA makes it to the Disarming Voice, but loses charge attack priority. That's extremely unfortunate. Groudon needing the Mud Shot down here and gets the Mud Shot down. Groudon continuing to farm. Ho-Oh now going to be baited here with a Fire Punch, needing the opponent to shield, and they do. Groudon falls one turn short of the Precipice Blades. Ho-Oh picks up the KO with the Brave Bird, and that's game over. Moving into the next match, leading PRIMARINA into Palkia. Palkia's energy is walled, so we will see a safe switch by the opponent into Dialga, and Dialga will of course be answered by Groudon. Opponent is going to be firing off the Iron Head here on charge attack priority. This Iron Head landing means if the opponent wants, they do have the ability to double shield, farm down, and make a play for switch, but of course they do have to give up both shields to do so. And it looks like that's exactly what the opponent is going for here, is they're going to go for the 2 shield farm down play, just using the power of Dialga to make the play for switch advantage. Now going to send in PRIMARINA. These waterfalls, of course, not doing a ton of damage, but PRIMARINA will be able to withstand an Iron Head here. Opponent goes for the Iron Head. PRIMARINA makes it to the Disarming Voice. This is neutral damage. Is it going to be enough to knock out Dialga? It is not. The switch into the Tyranitar, and the bites are going to pick up the KO. Opponent can send back in the Palkia here, but the Palkia doesn't have any energy. It switched out right away, and with 2 shields to hide behind, Tyranitar is feeling pretty comfortable here. The Aqua Tail by Palkia will of course be shielded. Palkia has a very high attack stat. Tyranitar continuing to farm. Opponent in the back, they have Solgaleo, and Solgaleo is not a fan of the super effective dark damage. The Brutal Swing connects, that does massive damage, and the Solgaleo here only farmed up to 4. That is a nice no shield there on the Iron Head. Back in comes the Palkia, and the Palkia cannot get the farm down. So Shadow Tyranitar showing its worth as well, as it's able to take that game. Picking up a bit of a tricky lead in the next match, PRIMARINA versus Kyogre. Opponent is going to save switch into Zacian, and now we're going to see a counter switch into Groudon. Even though PRIMARINA, of course, is going to be walling the water damage from Kyogre, just due to the massive difference in stat product, Kyogre still has quite a bit of play there since PRIMARINA is running Waterfall. We're going to see Groudon massively overfarm here, fire off the Precipice Blades. Precipice Blades is going to be enough to pick up the KO. That's very nice. In comes the Kyogre. Kyogre unable to get the farm down as Groudon will make Precipice Blades number 2, and this is going to grab a shield from the opponent. So the Kyogre does have some energy here. At this point, I mean, you can't send in the Tyranitar. You have to bring back in that PRIMARINA. In comes the PRIMARINA. PRIMARINA farming up energy here. The opponent has farmed up past the Thunder, so we will see a shield from the PRIMARINA. Is it the Thunder? No, it is just going to be the Surf. And it looks like the opponent is only running Water Charge moves here, or potentially running Blizzard, as they are just going for the Surf. And now we see the Disarming Voice bait fired off here by the PRIMARINA. PRIMARINA's Disarming Voice does get shielded. PRIMARINA trying to make it to the Moonblast here, getting to the Moonblast, and this is going to do some sizable damage to Kyogre. The Moonblast connects, getting Kyogre low. In the back, it's Xerneas, and this is not looking good whatsoever, as of course with Bite, the bites are heavily resisted. Xerneas at the back-to-back close combats here, and able to outpace the Tyranitar by 1 single turn. Close combat picks up the KO. The PRIMARINA is just too low, and Xerneas gets the Geomancy farm down. Moving into the next match, leading PRIMARINA into Mamoswine. This is a very nice matchup for the PRIMARINA as Waterfall will hit for massive damage. Opponent save switches into Lugia, and Lugia will be answered with the Shadow Tyranitar. Tyranitar continuing to farm, going for the Brutal Swing on charge attack priority. This Brutal Swing is going to do quite a lot of damage to the Lugia, and it picks up the knockout. In the back, it's Palkia. Palkia could have potentially gone for an Aqua Tail there, but instead going to let the Brutal Swing be shielded and look for a farm down. Palkia takes massive damage trying to get that farm down. In comes the Groudon. Groudon could potentially be hit with a Draco Meteor here. Draco Meteor would do a ton of damage. Opponent opting for the super effective Aqua Tail, and we see a switch and a catch onto PRIMARINA as the opponent goes for Aqua Tail number 2. These waterfalls, of course, are double resisted, so this is actually a very difficult health range for the PRIMARINA to deal with here on the Palkia. PRIMARINA is just going to go for the Disarming Voice, just trying to get rid of the Palkia. Palkia has to shield this, and they do. Palkia, again, oh my goodness, these waterfalls just doing absolutely nothing, but the Dragon Breaths are also double resisted. Opponent going to send in the Mamoswine. PRIMARINA going to have to commit a shield here, but will be able to make it to the Moonblast. And the Moonblast plus the Waterfall damage should mean game over for the opponent. Firing off the Moonblast here. Moonblast is going to connect into the Mamoswine. All that's left in the back is the Palkia. Palkia on 1 HP, making the last second Aqua Tail. That KOs the PRIMARINA, but one Mud Shot from the Groudon means game over. Moving into the next match, leading Waterfall Primarina into Groudon. Not a bad matchup for the Primarina. Waterfall's hitting for super effective damage. Opponent safe switches into the Melmetal, and this right here is one of the many reasons why Melmetal does not see nearly as much play in the current Master League compared to in the past, as this matchup is just absolutely miserable for the Melmetal. After one superpower, Groudon can go for a Fire Punch and just farm down. Groudon doesn't have to shield, and the energy that Groudon has is hyper useful unless the opponent has something like a Flyer in the back. Melmetal is going to make it to a last second superpower, but again, Groudon just does not care. Groudon able to withstand that damage. In the back, the opponent does have a Flyer as they're forced to bring in Rayquaza. Rayquaza hit with the Fire Punch. That's not going to do a whole lot of damage. Now going to go for the Precipice Blades. Precipice Blades, that's double resisted, but it sure does not look it. In comes the Tyranitar, and the Tyranitar more than happy to tank this energy, and then once the opponent sends in the Groudon, just quick switch into the Primarina. In comes the Groudon. Groudon farming up energy here. Precipice Blades would do quite a lot of damage. Lets it go. It's the Fire Punch bait. What a call. Oh my goodness. The Groudon did have a bit of energy from the start of the game when they were checking the fast move. At this point, I think this is only enough for a Fire Punch. I could be mistaken though. We do see the Fire Punch shielded, but at this point, it's basically just about getting the waterfall damage in. The opponent is going to fire off another Fire Punch, and Primarina just does not care. Getting that full farm down. In comes Rayquaza, going straight for the Moonblast here. I mean, the opponent no longer has a win con, so they are just going to let Rayquaza get KO'd. Moving into the next match, and we see the same leads as last game, Waterfall Primarina into Groudon. This Groudon, however, is staying in this matchup, but even though they're taking super effective damage, Groudon does have quite a bit of play here because Precipice Blades is an absurdly strong move neutrally. The Precipice Blades does get shielded. The Waterfalls have done enough that this is going to be enough to pick up the knockout here with the Disarming Voice. The opponent is going to commit the shield, and the opponent does get to the charge move here with 1 HP left on the Groudon, and we do see the final shield used by Primarina. What is the opponent going to be sending in here? The Groudon has been KO'd. Opponent is going to send in Dragonite. Dragonite farming up quite a bit of energy here as Primarina is going to go for the Disarming Voice. The Disarming Voice does get shielded. Primarina opting to go for another Disarming Voice. This is super effective damage, but as opposed to a Moonblast, this is actually survivable for the opponent. Opponent will need to go for the single resisted superpower here, and they do. The superpower plus the switch into the Mamoswine, and this is suddenly looking quite dire, as the Mamoswine up energy is going to be able to hit for massive damage here as the Avalanche connects, nearly picking up a one-hit KO onto the Groudon. And of course, the Dragonite has energy in the back, and we know that a superpower can KO the Tyranitar, and they got there. This will be the superpower. This is going to pick up the one-hit KO onto the Tyranitar. All that's left in the back is the Groudon, and the Dragonite takes the win. Groudon leads so nice, this battler has to see it thrice, as we see for a third game in a row the Groudon lead. The opponent save switches into a Zekrom. Zekrom immediately met with a Disarming Voice. That's going to connect, and now we see a switch into the Shadow Tyranitar, looking for the farm down, not quite able to get the farm down before Zekrom makes it to a charge attack. It's the Fusion Bolt. That does big damage, but the Tyranitar is able to hang on and get the farm. Now the question is, can Tyranitar make it to a Brutal Swing versus the Groudon? This will be close. The opponent sends in Dialga, and unfortunately no Brutal Swing for the Tyranitar, but alignment is looking amazing in this game. Groudon going to go for a bait here with the Fire Punch as the opponent fires off the Iron Head. The Iron Head will be no shielded, going for the Fire Punch bait. This is a big call here. The Fire Punch bait into Dialga does get shielded. Groudon going to be able to comfortably make it to the Precipice Blades, deciding to bank it for later and sending in the Primarina. Primarina now in a bit of a difficult situation here. The Iron Head is going to do quite a lot of damage, and as we see, these Dragon Breaths are coming pretty close to knocking out. Firing off the Moonblast here. Moonblast will pick up the knockout. The opponent is going to expend the final shield and get a full farm down. Groudon getting the Mud Shot through as the opponent fires off their energy. A Fire Punch is needed to KO the Dialga. Opponent sends in the Groudon. Is there possibly a win con here? The Groudon has such little HP left. Going for the Precipice Blades. Will this be enough to KO? Precipice Blades does get the KO. In comes the Dialga, and the Groudon able to survive here, taking full advantage of that 15 HP stat and takes the win. All in all, I do like the creativity behind trying out Waterfall PRIMARINA as a core breaker for the ZYGARDE teams. As we know, the ZYGARDE Solgaleo core is extremely difficult to break at the current moment. In a couple weeks, we do have Sandsear Storm Landorus arriving, which should help in that department, as is a Pokemon that very comfortably defeats Solgaleo, and with a 1 mudshot head start, can beat ZYGARDE in all evens as well. But in the interim, I do think that the typing is very interesting. Of course, it's a fairy type that does have a resistance to the fire spin from Solgaleo, but the stats do let it down just a little bit in the open leagues. Whereas in something like Master Premier, the overall stat products are lower, so we do see Waterfall PRIMARINA have quite a bit of play. In open, it can put in some nice work, but it can't really, I would say, like 1v2 or 1v3 in endgames, just due to the fact that its stats aren't quite what a lot of the more typical Master League Open Pokemon are. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated, so thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.